Fight fans, you thought we were getting Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone. We talked about it on the show. Dana White recently shot that down. He said there was never any truth in that, even though both guys are going back and forth in the media. He recently came out this week, said 100% the matchup is Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 2. And the winner would get a shot at the title. They'll get a shot at the title after Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov square off. Of course, this will be the 5th time that Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov will have been scheduled. We will just hold our breath and pray to God that it actually happens this time. But let's look at this matchup first between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, and I'm going to do another video later on Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. I'm Mike with Fights with Friends. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's look into what these guys have been doing for the last 4 years since their first matchup. Since then, Dustin Poirier seems like a different fighter. He's won 8 of his last 9 since the match with Conor over 4 years ago in September of 2014. His only loss, flash knockout to Michael Johnson. Now, one thing we can take from that is it is similar to what happened to him against Conor almost exactly 2 years later. You look at the 5 fights after that, though, 2 of them with Eddie Alvarez. Of course, there was the one no contest. Later, he came back and knocked out Eddie Alvarez, but he got through a match with a tough Jim Miller. Submits Anthony Pettis in the 3rd round. That's a tough submission. And then that war with Justin Gaethje. And he took Justin Gaethje's punches. He looked better in his last 2 fights, that fight against Justin Gaethje and the next fight against Eddie Alvarez, I think than he has in his entire career. He's tightened up his defense. His striking is more accurate. It's tighter. He doesn't leave, I believe, the same openings he did maybe even a couple years ago. I think Dustin Poirier is at his prime. I think this is the right time. And I think this could be a bad matchup for Conor McGregor. Let's take a look at what Conor McGregor has been doing for the last 4 years. Now, Conor, since the match with Dustin Poirier, had a match where I thought he struggled a little more than he should have against Dennis Seaver, and then struggled mightily against Chad Mendes. The only reason possibly I believe that he beat Chad Mendes is because Mendes ran out of gas. His stamina wasn't very good. Then he starts as Jose Aldo, 13 seconds, great shot, great counterpunch. Say what you will about the intimidation factor, or some people say Jose Aldo froze. I don't think you can take anything away from Conor for that fight. Then he moves up, fights Nate Diaz, though loses by submission, and this had happened in his career. In the rematch with Nate Diaz, it went to a majority decision. A lot of people thought that Nate Diaz won the fight, including myself. I scored it narrowly for Nate Diaz, 3 rounds to 2. There were some close rounds in there, so I wouldn't pick on judges or nitpick those that pick Conor for that one. I felt that it was within the margin of error, or maybe they're just a better judge than me. Then he fights Eddie Alvarez. Brilliant, but a common opponent for both. Wins another title. Now, of course, he had 2 titles at the same time. He's the first fighter ever to do that. Then he has a hiatus, of course, is stripped of the titles, goes over to boxing, comes back, and is absolutely dominated by Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, being 5-2, we're looking at that. If you take away the Diaz win here, he's really 4-3 over the last 4 years, and like I said, struggled mightily against Chad Mendes. But one of the most important things is that all 4 of his losses have came by submission. Most important, I think. Dustin Poirier, out of his 24 wins, 7 of them have came by submission. He has a great submission game. He knows how to finish guys. He's finished almost a third of his matches by submission. He's finished half of his matches by knockout. I feel this is a very tough matchup for Conor McGregor, a much tougher matchup than it was the first time around. So there's an in-depth look at what both men have been doing since the first matchup over 4 years ago. I believe both of these men can be each other's kryptonite. Dustin Poirier, of course, it's been shown that he can be caught early. Conor did it in the first match. Michael Johnson did it 2 years later, like we talked about. Conor McGregor, all 4 of his losses by submission. We've also seen him gas out in several different fights. The fight against Nate Diaz and the last fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, to defend Conor McGregor, I don't believe it's a training issue for a second. I don't believe it's that kind of a cardio issue. It might not be anything that he can overcome. Conor McGregor is a very fast twitch, quick, explosive, powerful athlete. And the pace that he sets, 100 miles an hour, those 2 things combined, I believe that's why he's not the same fighter for 25 minutes as Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier is. I'm not saying he doesn't have good cardio. He doesn't have great cardio like those guys do and like Khabib Nurmagomedov does. That's why I'm actually going to pick Dustin Poirier to win the rematch by 4th round submission. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know down there in the comments. Please hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. Ring that bell to make sure you're notified whenever I post a new video or go live. Until next time, as always, I love you, I respect you, and I'll see your fine asses later.